I wonder if you can tell who it is. But before all of that, at the time of the Napoleonic Wars with France, the naval battles resulted in many French prisoners of war being brought back to England. The higher ranking officers were allocated to one of 11 towns around Hampshire. They were allowed certain freedoms, but their movements were restricted. Well, there are 5 marked graves remembering those officers, and as Lindsay Kinghorn now reports, efforts are underway to restore them.
The iconic Battle of Waterloo, the finale of one of the most intense and far-reaching conflicts in history.
The Napoleonic Wars spanned the entire world. Literally every continent saw fighting. Hundreds of thousands of people died across Europe and around the world.
Between the years of 1792 and 1815, 100,000 French prisoners of war were housed in the UK, like these 5 whose headstones we see here.
They were in an awful state, exactly like the other headstones around them, covered in grime. And it's incredibly important that we take this opportunity to tell people about these individuals' experiences, which is why we clean the graves, creating these markers where people can come and remember these individuals' lives.
So this is the grave of Jean de L'Huil, who was an artillery lieutenant in the French army and died at the age of 51. These 2 died much younger. They were both French naval officers. Joseph Rieuf died at the age of 28. Cyprien Laveau died at the age of 29. He'd spent the last 5 years of his life as a prisoner of war in the UK, the last 2 of those spent here in Alresford. These 2 individuals here and here were both captured in Guadeloupe. Pierre Garnier was a lieutenant in the French army, and Marie Fournier chose to follow her husband into captivity. We don't know what happened to her husband, but what we do know is that 9 months before Marie's death, she's quite likely to have attended Pierre's funeral. It was incredibly rare for wives and children to follow their husbands into captivity. In 1812, out of 50,000 French prisoners of war in England, just 152 of them were wives and children. What were their lives like here as prisoners of war?
These folks were absolutely a key part of the community. They would have been known by the locals, they mixed with the locals, drank with them, laughed with them.
A lady stopped yesterday and told me that she'd found some stuff from these guys in her loft, and they took it to the local museum and it was all proved to be there. So they were a big influence,
What's the next project?
So we know that we have French POWs in Odium, so we're going to send some of our volunteers out there to assess those and see what work is needed there. We also have veterans of the British Army who are buried across the south, particularly in Southampton, where we have a series of 30 graves that we've assessed, and we're looking at gaining funding to have those graves restored.
The aim? For more people to learn about the history of those who were once such a huge part of the local area. Lindsay Kinghorn, BBC South Today, Alresford.